obviously the show's called Bring to Hill. So what does healing look like to you? Like through your eyes, what does healing look like?
What a question. This is the question, the exhibition is a question in a way, it's like, can healing be the answer to these situations? For me, healing looks like, it's a big question. I'm exploring it, but for me, it represents solidarity, or what I feel like I can get from healing, or that we can get from healing, is an idea of solidarity. One of the big and obvious divides, for me, because of my genetics, but also like in in English culture at the moment, is this massive divide between black and white, the black and white experiences. And recently, black communities have been able to develop certain vocabulary for example, intergenerational trauma, understanding how these things work, and how that affects your psyche, your physical being. And they've done that work to realize that and understand, right, now we need to transcend that or move forward, or this is how we change these spaces. But a lot of white communities haven't done that work because they haven't felt it as an immediate, need to do. So you have one community that has communicated so much and is trying to communicate. They've done so much research and trying to communicate with this new vocabulary to say, right, this is why we need to change. But they have to ask permission basically from the majority to be on board with that, which is white communities who haven't done that work. So they don't know what you're talking about. It's like, why is this a thing? Just forget it or pretend that you're making it a problem. But it's because they don't have that vocabulary. They don't even know that these things are issues and how they work. And so for me, there's this massive gap in how we can communicate, but there's the intention there, but one person has the vocabulary and the other one doesn't. And so for me, this exhibition is just asking that question of how we can extend that vocabulary to a white context so they can understand it in their own, with regards to their own history and their own experiences. What the white community is not healthy physically or mentally. If you look at a lot of the statistics when it comes to health, you come to mental health, alcoholic addiction, drug addiction, suicide, performance in schools. White people, and especially white working class people, are suffering. They're not having a good time of it, but there's not the vocabulary or the acknowledgement to be able to say these issues are happening. How do we process this? How do we understand this in a wider context? And because of the history of racism, a lot of the time it comes down across racist lines. But actually there's a lot of pain in the white condition, and that needs to be looked at and healed. And I feel like there's a lot of tools that we've developed in the black community that can be offered to say, all right, guys, these are some frameworks that you can use to heal that. And so I'm hoping that this exhibition is just exploring, just asking that question, how can that work? Because it has to be done very delicately, right? You can't just play around with this because it could go catastrophically or be exploited. But at the same time, it's just saying, right, how do we bridge that gap between these two communities and get the understanding of white pain and reframe the understanding of white pain as something that is worth looking into and healing. And then once that vocabulary is developed there within the white community of their pain and their suffering, especially historically, then that conversation can happen because they've both got a personal grounding with which to relate to the conversation, But now, so many of the white communities are so detached from their own pain, especially historically, and how those systems work, that there can't even be, a conversation, or it becomes a competition where it's like, oh, it's me or you, But actually, healing someone can be healing for yourself. So I don't even know what question you even asked now. I just went off on a tangent. What was the question, that one?
What does healing look like?
Okay, so for me, healing would look like revisiting. It's like the character in one of the films is the goose, right? Who's based on Sankofa, which is a Ghanaian symbol, an Akan symbol, one of the Adinkra, and it means looking at your past to be able to, inform your future. And I feel like being able to be attached to your ancestral story. And I'm not just talking about, oh, these people came there and did this, but what emotionally was your grandmother going through? Why? What was the context? What emotionally was her grandmother going through? What were the stories and the pains being passed down, you know? When we can make space for each other in that way and understand that a lot of violence comes from vulnerability, it comes from being out of balance, not just this kind of goody baddie dynamic. And if we can heal that vulnerability, then hopefully we can heal a lot of the violence, you know.
What do you say to people that would say like, why does the history matter? Or you know what I'm saying? What do you say to that?
Yeah. Well, we do, innit? And, you know, even to a degree, like all of us, it's like raised in this situation. Like even for me, I was raised Rastafarian, I understood the importance of history, but I always felt it was something that I could choose, you know? I didn't realize how integral it was to everything that I was doing, even my ideas and everything. Sometimes people can feel scared and trapped, you know, especially when you're coming from a British context. You know that as soon as you start digging into our history, there's a lot of things that we're ashamed of. There are a lot of things that we don't want to admit that our people could have been part of, and so we avoid it. But actually, what does that create? That creates you denying the reality of things that happen, and so you're living in a lie. And you're just floundering around, but you don't know where you're going and you don't know where you're coming from. So as painful as it is, I think, unless we understand our context, we don't, you know, it is affecting us whether we want to admit it or not. And so you can lie to yourself or not. But yeah, and also one thing I have to say as well is that the way that we understand things is very binary and it's very punitive, right? So at the moment, we understand that if someone does something bad, you punish them. You shout at them, you hit them, or you torture them, basically. You put them in a room, in a box for 50 years. We know that that doesn't change people. Healing changes and stops those processes. You know, that's what healing does. And so when we understand, like, instead of it being this polarized thing where someone's evil or good or bad, we understand context, we understand and predict that people from experience certain things or have been treated a certain way will behave a certain way. We understand how these systems work, you know. That's the only way, you know. So when you think about your own ancestry and you're scared and you're like, am I good or am I bad? It doesn't exist. Do you know what I mean? It's a nuanced thing, and the more you research and the more you understand about your own dynamics and your own psyche, you understand that these like basic dynamics don't work in that way. And it liberates you from being scared of looking at certain parts of your history and feeling like, oh, my people did this or that. But also it stops you from having this superiority complex where we end up with the empire, where it's like these people are so far below us that we can do whatever we like, missing the whole core of the problem. You know, it takes that kind of dynamic away. So yeah, don't worry about the punitive thing. If you feel like you look at a point in your history and you say, wow, my people weren't acting in a way that I like, you don't chastise them or yourself. You don't think you're evil and think that you have to now repent for it. You know, learn from it. Understand, why did that happen? You know, and how can we change that, you know?
Kind of change the direction.
Yeah.
But what was your original art form? Like, what did you start off doing as art? How long ago did you did this passion begin?
That's a really good question, man. Yeah, I guess for me, I mean, the obvious answer would be drawing, right? Because when I was a kid, it's easy to draw, it's cheap to draw. We didn't have much money, so, you know, any piece of paper or whatever, you can do that. And as kids, you scribble around and do stuff. But then I was good at drawing, and so everyone would say that I'm an artist. Do you know what I mean? And then from there, I got more confident in the realm of art, and I felt like, yeah, I've got something to offer. And that's when my ideas started to evolve past that, let's say. Because now I don't really draw much. Even though I love it, it's always going to be a part of my practice, but now I'm, you know, expanding myself and trying out new mediums. But that isn't an artist for me. If you can draw, you know, it was just a fluke that I could draw, but also that my spirit was creative in that way. For me, the artist comes from the ideas, comes from people that ask certain questions and explore things. So I have a big affinity with science as well. I'm always fascinated by that. And I see them as artists. And back in the day, obviously you got the alchemists and stuff. That was all very connected, you know, science, spirituality, and the arts was kind of one. And then as we go on, things get more segmented and separated. But I think an artist is someone who is asking certain questions or exploring the world in a different light, you know. And so there's artists who would never think they're artists, you know. Yeah, so for me, I think I've always had that inquisitive mindset, which I think would make me an artist, and then mix that with my upbringing, where I felt like there was a lot of things in the world that had to, that could be addressed or changed. You know, again, being raised as a Rastafarian, there's a big idea of making things better. You know, somehow you're a representative of humanity, you know, and you've got a responsibility there. And so that responsibility has always kind of come through in my work as well, where I feel like I need to, explore certain dynamics that people might not have seen, or ask questions that I feel like could create breakthroughs for us, just in paradigm shifts in the way we're thinking. And you're not always going to get it right, you know, but I feel like it's my job to ask these questions and explore these settings. But that for me, I think, was with me since before I was drawing. But as a medium, yeah, I think it all started with drawing. Yeah, large charcoal drawings and, you know, figurative stuff, because there's something about the awe, you know, like even with this, like with the films and with the garment, I like to impress people first, you know. I feel like it's important when you're talking about important subjects to earn the audience's respect, whether that's with they realize you spent a lot of time on it, or they realize that you've had a lot of skill on it, or they realize that you've, you know, really pained over it. There's got to be something that the general audience can relate on a universal level to say, right, okay, this person's put in this, now I'm going to listen to what they have to say. And I feel like a lot of contemporary art misses that step, you know. It's very entitled, where it might do something that looks, you know, almost disrespectful in a way, where it's like, well, I didn't really care, you know, you should just understand it because I am who I am. And I think with people who aren't educated in the arts like myself, that's just very off-putting, you know. And that's not been a way that historically things have been, you know. You'll use the most expensive material, or you will use a sacred piece of wood, or you'll spend a lot of time honing a skill, or you'll do something that when people look at it, even not from your culture, they say, oh wow, this was important. Whatever this subject was, it you know, it was worthy of my time and attention. And so, yeah, so that's something that's quite important to me.
So like, where do you actually want to go with this? Like, what are you trying to achieve?
With my practice or this project?
Not even just the product, just in general.
Yeah, man. I'm so glad you asked that question. People don't usually ask that question, you know, when it comes to like art stuff, you know. But yeah, for me, I'm extremely ambitious. Yeah, so as an artist, what I want to achieve is, first of all, change. The way that art is understood at the moment is far too separate and elitist, you know. I really believe, hey, and this sounds so arty and intense, you know, but for me, there's a role that art has to play in society that I don't think it's playing at the moment. And it's the connector. For me, it's the glue of all these different separate segments that we have at the moment. It adds context to things. I don't understand how the arts is so separate. When I talk to normal people who aren't art educated or art from a specifically middle class background, who went to museums all the time as children, no one knows anything about the arts. When you talk about contemporary art, all you hear is people roll their eyes and they're like, because all it does, it represents elitism. It's either people with a certain educational background or people from a certain economic background. That does us a disservice. That does everyone, humanity, a disservice. You know, as people in the arts, we're custodians of this realm, and we need to make sure that people engage with it. And also, different people engage with it, it becomes more rich. You know, I feel like the gene pool of the arts is way too small. If we're sitting at the bus stop, I feel like the same way people might talk about sports, or the same way people might talk about soap operas, they should be talking about the arts. They should be talking about the latest exhibition that was put on. This isn't them having to agree with the art or even like it, but to be engaged and to know it's for them to have an opinion on. And if the masses don't like it, then the masses will say they don't like it. At the moment, the masses don't even talk about it. They don't even think they can. And when you bring certain people into the arts environment who could be completely confident in their own world and space. Very opinionated people. You bring them into the arts, they feel insecure. They feel like they can't say anything. They feel stupid. Even if they have a strong opinion on the art in front of them, they won't really want to say it, because all of that structural class, all of that violence is in these spaces. And it says, you're lucky that you're even here. Don't make a fuss. This is an elite space and you're stupid, basically. And we need to change that, you know, and that comes to how we market the arts. That comes to the art we make. You know, like I said to you before, the way that I approach my art is that it should be, it should earn the respect, you know. And that's not saying that I have to change what I'm wanting to say. It's not the message that I'm talking about changing, but it's the approach to understand that the general public, people who are outside of the arts, are my audience, because I'm not making this just in my bedroom just for myself. I'm making this to communicate to people. So I need to have that respect and say, right, I want to speak to you. Please come in. Here's the table laid out with all my finest cutlery. You know, it doesn't have to be gold cutlery, but it's the best that I can afford. Here you go, please. And it shows that respect. You invite people into your space to hear what you want to say, you know. So for me, the biggest change would just be to bring the arts more central, you know, change the people that are engaged with the criticism of it, or deciding what goes there, you know, opening it out. You know, if by the time that I retire from the arts, if there's, and this isn't just about my art, this is about the arts, right? So it's not only my work, but being able to have the general public, people from working class backgrounds, just as much of any other backgrounds, knowing what the main 2 or 3 exhibitions are and being engaged by them, talking about them, you know. And we might, you know, not like people like Tracy Emin and Damien Hirst, but they started to bring art to a place where people would have an opinion on it, you know. People in general would have heard about it somehow, and we can build on that and get it even deeper to where people are actually talking about these themes, you know. I feel that's important. But for me as an artist, you know, I'm working at 2% at the moment, you know. As I start to build my craft, I want to make things way more ambitious. I want to just, you know, really create these spaces where we can reflect on stuff, you know, and it kind of bridges the gap between arts, maybe spirituality, places for reflection, histories, the sciences, and bringing them more to a general public who can come with no concept of who I am or anything about the arts and enjoy it in a really wholehearted way, you know. Yeah, but also I have to add as well, there has to be, you know, financially, as an artist, I want to be extremely successful, you know. I want to be able to accumulate enough resources where I'm not reliant on having to ask institutions for, you know, certain support. I want to be able to, on the commercial side of things as well, be able to make work that I really believe in and have teams that can make sure that that's sold, so that then I can support other artists, support other creatives, create environments and educational environments that will allow us to create better artwork. Because I struggle with the arts education establishment, you know. Yeah, I think it's just creating people to be exploited by the arts system. Do you know what I mean? In the arts. So yeah, I would like to create a new educational system. And I need finances to do that. So yeah, you can look at my stuff on my website, it's amarteygolding.com, and you can reach out to me on Instagram. It's Amartey Golding, AmarteyGolding. Yeah, and please do reach out